November the 3rd, 1957. Baikonur Cosmodrome. A stray dog picked up off the streets of Moscow less than 2 weeks earlier is sealed into a padded capsule with a harness that won't let her turn around. The Soviet Union will tell the world she survived up there for a week. The real telemetry, kept secret for the next 45 years, shows she was dead before the day was out. This is the story of Laika, the first living creature to orbit the Earth, and of a program that decided the truth about how she died was something the public didn't need to know. Sputnik 2 was never supposed to exist this fast. Riding the shock of Sputnik 1 a month earlier, Nikita Khrushchev wanted a second, even more impressive follow-up ready in time for November 7th, the 40th anniversary of the Bolshevik Revolution. Engineers were given roughly 4 weeks to design, build, and launch a second satellite, one that would carry a living passenger from essentially nothing. There was no time to build anything resembling a life support system that could bring an animal home. So the decision was made before a single component was built. This would be a one-way trip. Nobody involved was under the illusion that a dog would be coming back. The dog they chose was a small stray, roughly 3 years old, weighing about 11 pounds. One of several strays selected for the Soviet space program on the theory that a life on the street had already taught them how to withstand cold and hunger better than a pampered pet could. Soviet physiologist Vladimir Yazdovsky picked her as the primary flight animal only about 10 days before launch. She'd originally been named Kudryavka, Little Curly. Technicians renamed her Laika, from the Russian word for to bark, because she wouldn't stop. Training was fast and physically hard. Laika spent stretches of up to 20 days in cages that shrank a little more each time, to prepare her for a capsule she couldn't turn around in. She rode a centrifuge to get used to launch forces. She was played recordings of rocket noise. She was trained to eat a jellied nutrient paste built for weightlessness, and she was wired with sensors for heart rate, breathing, blood pressure, that would end up producing exactly the kind of data the Soviet government didn't want anyone to see for almost half a century. On November 3rd, Sputnik 2 launched. During the ascent, Laika's heart rate roughly tripled. That much was expected. Every test animals did. What wasn't supposed to happen came next. Part of the payload structure failed to separate cleanly from the capsule. That failure damaged the thermal insulation around Laika's compartment. The cooling fan, designed to activate once the cabin passed 15 degrees Celsius, couldn't keep up. Temperatures kept climbing. By the fourth orbit, somewhere between 5 and 7 hours after launch, Laika was dead. Not from the oxygen running out on scheduled days later. Not from a carefully timed dose of poisoned food delivered as a mercy before her air ran out. She died from heat and stress, in a cabin that had turned into an oven, alone. A few hours into a flight, the public was told, would last a week. And for the public, it did last a week, because that's the story the Soviet government told. Officials announced that Laika had survived several days in orbit, monitored the whole time, and had been humanely euthanized before her oxygen supply was exhausted. It was a version of events that let a genuinely unprecedented scientific achievement, a living creature in orbit, telemetry beaming back, read as controlled and humane, rather than as a malfunction nobody had accounted for. Sputnik 2 itself kept flying for months afterward, carrying Laika's body in a script nobody read as it burned up in the atmosphere on April 14, 1958, 5 months after her death, a detail that meant the world spent that entire time believing a dog who'd already died of overheating was still somehow part of an ongoing mission. The real story didn't surface for 45 years. The turning point came in October 2002, when Russian biologist Dmitry Malyshenkov of the Institute of Biological Problems stood up at a space conference in Houston and walked through the actual flight telemetry, the heart rate spike, the temperature curve, the timeline that ended in hours, not days. It was the first time the scientific record and the public story lined up. By then, some of the people who'd built that public story had already started saying something quieter, out of the spotlight. In 1998, 4 years before Malyshenkov's data went public, senior Soviet space medicine scientist Oleg Gazenko, one of the men who had helped select and prepare Laika for flight, said this: "Work with animals is a source of suffering to all of us. We treat them like babies who cannot speak. The more time passes, the more I'm sorry about it. We shouldn't have done it. We did not learn enough from this mission to justify the death of the dog." Laika never had a chance to come home. Everyone who sent her up there already knew that. What took 45 years wasn't admitting she died in space. It was admitting how.